Okay, go ahead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pursuit Live. We are continuing Season 4 with your creator and host, Mr. Dave Hawkins. Nothing, Dave? No what's up, killers? No nothing?
No, I got a little. I still got the intro music playing, so we're gonna be all right.
Oh, this guy. All right. It wouldn't be a show. Listen, it wouldn't be a normal show if Dave wasn't having some kind of technical difficulties. So I don't know what to tell you, but as always, I'm your producer, Chris, and we're bringing you a little bit deeper into Season 4 here, and we have a pretty interesting show. I hope everybody enjoys this. Please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Mr. Martin Richter, Hog Snort Resort. Martin, thank you for joining.
How you guys doing? Appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us. I mean, this is, I know we've been working on this for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm finally glad to have you on here.
Appreciate it. Ready to jump into it.
That's it.
All right. Well, I mean, before we get started, I do want to announce that we are doing a big push here. The Pursuit Live Instagram page and the Pursuit Live YouTube. If you're not following both of those pages, please jump over to both of those pages, hit that subscribe button. As you can see, that's where we are broadcasting the show now. If you're watching the show over my shoulder and you're listening to me pointing at you right now, and you're watching on Only Bows or Urban Pursuit, you're going to be getting behind the scenes footage from now on. All right. Head over to the YouTube. You're going to see the show as we intend it. It's not going to be on that little screen where you're going to see us like this. No, you're going to see it right how you want it in the perfect aspect ratio. And that's how we want to deliver the best quality show that we can to you. That's the best way to do it. So please head over to the YouTube, smash that subscribe button, head over to the Pursuit Live Instagram, hit that follow button. It doesn't cost you a dime and it helps us out a whole lot. So with that, just a couple other announcements, some housekeeping. Listen, New York State Empire Outdoor Sportsman Show is coming up very soon, end of next month. It's going to be at the Rockland County Community College. The Pursuit Live booth will be booths 201, 202. You got to walk by us if you're coming in the door. We are right there. You can't miss us. So please stop by. We'd love to see everybody. We'd love to hang out. We did some changes to the booth this year to try and make it a little more interactive for everybody and get more people in and kind of talking to us, because that's what we're all about, is talking to the people. So with that, Great American Outdoor Show is coming up soon. We're hoping to see everybody there. If you're interested in meeting up with us, we're kind of finalizing our plans and, hotels and everything. So please, if you're going to be down there and you want to meet up, please, just shoot us a message and we'll try to coordinate, meet up, have a few drinks, have a good time. That's what it's all about. So other than that, Dave, I don't know. Or did you fix all your issues now?
I think I made more. So we're going to eliminate a couple things here. We'll be good to go.
Eliminating all. I don't know why you're having issues. I'm having great success right now, Dave.
It's all right. We can hammer that out a different night.
This guy. All right. So enough about this. Martin, are you ready to get started with this? I think we've kind of taken up enough bullshit time.
I'm ready. I'm good. We're good to go.
Let's jump into it.
That's it. So, Martin, again, thank you for taking time.
Yes, sir.
For sharing with us on a Friday night here. Obviously, you're a busy man on the hunt. We like to get the show started and let the guests really kind of give a little info about themselves. Where do you call home? What got you out in the outdoor industry? And really just hunting in general.
Okay. Home right now is down in South Georgia. Been living here for about 15 years. I moved up from Florida. So I was down in Florida, northeastern Florida for about 20 years. And, the backup go behind that, then I was up, well, actually, I was raised up in Illinois, just out in the suburbs outside of Chicago, through my teenage years. And go back a little bit farther than that, I was born in Europe. So I came over when I was just a little tyke, little guy.
Okay.
So from Europe to the Midwest, and then Florida, and then landed here in Georgia. So this is where I call home, down here, Southeast Georgia.
All right. That's
So
quite the journey.
not too far from the Altamaha River. So
Okay.
people that know the southern region, they know that river.
Okay.
It's got some history.
Very cool. So did you grow up, in a hunting household? Was this something you picked up later in life?
Yeah, I kind of joke about that. When people say it's in your DNA, I mean, it's really in the DNA, for my grandfather, my father, myself, and then, my stepson too. He's a river rat. He's out there. When he's not working, he's out on the river, he's either fishing or he's hunting, whatever's in season, he's doing it. So yeah, that's what we love to do. It's been doing it a long time. So,
Okay.
it started out with obviously with deer hunting when I was young.
I was going to ask you.
And, and it, from stories from my grandfather in Europe, as a matter of fact, I used to, when I was younger, up until I was about 19, every year we would go back and I would spend 4 weeks with my grandparents.
Okay.
And that was walking alongside with him because he was an active hunter. I mean, all the way till he passed, that was his love. And, I got to take part in that, just walking by his side, that with your granddad, and then obviously in the States when I was old enough, shooting with my dad when I was, 12, 13 years old on the range, plinking with a 22 while he was dialing in his deer rifles and elk rifles, to go out west.
Yep.
And, just in the DNA, and you start growing and maturing and handling a firearm, and you start hunting when you're 16 in Illinois. We actually hunted in Wisconsin quite a bit because where we lived in Illinois, it's just, all private property, not a lot of farmland when I was a teenager. So we'd go up to an area, I believe it was Minocqua, Wisconsin. Hunted that area for years. And then when I moved out, when I moved to Florida actually, and was on my own, hunting in Florida, everything is WMA or it's private, and unless somebody, you're with somebody personally, it's really difficult, to do any hunting outside of deer season, going on a WMA, it's difficult, if you're not familiar with the area and you don't know anybody to kind of shoulder you when you're out there doing it. So, as I got older and started meeting people and obviously coming to Georgia, that's where it really took off, with the agriculture out here and the farmlands. I got to know some good people and it just snowballed, just progressed. So that's kind of where it started.
Okay. What are some of the challenges I'm sure that you face with the terrain, hunting deep south, like marshlands and swamps like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I work with people up in Michigan. And when I go to visit up there, it's such I want to say it's a friendlier environment. I know you have the wicked winters, with the drop in temperatures, but what you encounter down here, especially in this area, the Altamaha, the basin area, is, South Georgia, we have this ridiculous swamp heat, this high humidity. And but we do, like right now, it still dips down below freezing. So if you do a all day hunt, maybe an all night hunt, all the way up through the morning, you experience sundown, the temperatures are getting cooler, you got high humidity, and then in the middle of the night, your equipment starts to sweat. And then, early in the morning, things start freezing over, and the sun comes up, things start sweating again. So you have this huge fluctuation, as far as conditions, where I think, when you're hunting farther north, especially in the wintertime, you're dealing with cold, freezing temperature until you get back to your cabin, or your house or whatnot. It's more of a constant. Sure. You can prepare for it, But down here, you have such a huge swing. You know, it's really hard to or difficult to pull a real comfortable all day, all night hunt. You know, it's but it's challenging. You know, that's what makes it. Should I say when I come down here hunting, I do a full night and a full day, or maybe 2 days and a full night straight. Even if you don't make a harvest, you know, you feel like you accomplished something. You know, that was another huge step. You know, it's you guys are familiar with that. You know, when you're chasing that big deer over weeks or months, or even, you know, watching them for a couple of years, you know, the area, and then you're dealing with the conditions, you know, and if you can make that harvest all that much sweeter, you know, just the effort that goes into it. But yeah, it's challenging, very challenging.
All right. So to kind of do a soft segue into obviously the hog hunting, was it at the point when you were younger, was it a nuisance issue? Was it just something to get more meat in the freezer and, you know, just something else to hunt? How did you really get started with that?
You know, I think I'll tell you what it actually was is, you know, obviously being around hunters my whole life, you know, as a youngster growing up and hearing stories about my grandfather and out there with the Eurasian boars, you know, and some of the encounters out there and seeing some of the pictures. When I was growing up, obviously in Illinois, you didn't have hogs out there. You know, it was just deer hunting.
Right.
And that transpired into even like mule deer hunting and elk hunting out in Montana that I got to do with my father. But in the back of my mind was this yearning, if you will, to experience what my grandfather experienced while out there boar hunting. And I don't want to say that he was going after boar, but they were prevalent in that area. And that's something you didn't experience that in the Midwest. So when I moved to Florida, you know, back in the early 90s, actually it was 1990, I heard from some coworkers, you know, obviously not as far south as like the Everglades, but, you know, just south of Jacksonville, Florida, you know, the areas down there, there's a lot of swamp and whatnot. I always heard about, yeah, they have feral hogs down here. And I've always wanted to experience or see what this was all about, you know, and,
Sure.
And back in the 90s, you know, hog hunting, even though I'm sure it was going on strong out in Texas and, you know, that area out there in Florida, I don't want to say you heard a lot about it. You know, it was something that somebody or a deer hunter would occasionally, they would run into, or they would have experience with hogs, but you didn't hear about anybody particularly going after hogs. And there was, in that area, there was no agriculture, you know, so you didn't hear that part of it neither, you know, about fields being damaged and crops. So as you know, deer season, it's a real small snippet, you know, a part of the calendar. So you only heard about the hunting stories really, you know, a month out of the year or 6 weeks out of the year. And then occasionally you hear about some encounter, you know, with a sounder or something. And that's what kind of stoked the fire a little bit. You know, I was trying to get my foot in the door with the deer hunting and getting to know some guys. And then I met a gentleman that was an avid deer hunter. And he said, you know, this area that I go, this WMA, they have hogs in there. And I was like, you got to take me there. This is something I want to see. And that is actually where I experienced my first sounder running by a stand where I was up in a tree deer hunting.
Yep.
Not going after hogs, but I was up on a ladder stand. It wasn't a climber, just one of those old rinkety-dink ladders with the steel platform. Yep. You know, I was tethered to the tree. You know, you can't turn around. You know, you're limited as far as your flexibility. And I'll be dang, you know, I had a sounder come in behind me on a fire break, you know, on a pine road. And my heart just started coming through my chest. So like, this is it. You know, I'm actually experiencing what they sound like. You could smell them, you know, as they ran right behind me. But I mean, they were moving out, they were booking, you know, it was a sow with a bunch of little ones, you know, little shoals. But that's what really got it going. And the next hurdle was, because it was deer season, you know, down here in this area, you can hunt hog big game, small game season, but you have to use the appropriate weapon. Meaning, if it's deer season, you have to use center fire. During muzzleloader, you got to use muzzleloader. Small game, you have to use either rimfire or shotgun. So if you are targeting hogs in that season, you have to use the appropriate weapon. So that being said, I still couldn't hunt hogs year round. You know, it was only through deer season.
Right.
And again, most of the guys that I knew, they weren't going after hogs. It was all deer. So it slowly switched. It progressed because after deer season was over, you know, all your hunting clothes went back in the closet, you know what I mean? And guys were already talking about everything else, other stuff going on. And all I was thinking about was like, where do I find hogs? How can I find some private property? Yeah, it's just like, you know, and it was the hook, you know, it was the hook that set me. So,
all right.
The story goes on, but that was the start of it, was through a good friend in deer season.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So I want to fast forward a little bit. You got some property. You're on some hogs now.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I'm sure there was a large learning curve hunting hog. I'm sure it's a lot of trial and error, whether there's baiting involved or stalking techniques or whatever it is. What do you think was one of the, if you had to pick the biggest hurdle in the beginning as a new hog hunter that you had?
I tell you what, it's probably going to surprise a lot of people that are listening. I think, first of all, the biggest hurdle obviously is finding the right area, you know, where you have access to the animals. Without the access, or without even having the animals, you know, just like you are with deer hunting. So set that aside. I want to say another hurdle was, I want to back up a little bit. I'm kind of an information junkie, right? If there's something I'm interested in, I will go and dive into literature. I'll just go off the deep end. I'll read everything I can get my hands on.
That's good.
Well, back then, DVDs were just coming around, but it was more VHS tapes.
Yep.
Then I got into the DVDs. YouTube wasn't there. You know what I mean? So you'd watch the hunting channels. There was hardly anything on hog hunting, hardly anything at all. But once I started reading all this literature, and trying to gain all this knowledge in the limited time I had in the field, actually physically seeing hogs in their natural environment was discerning or scraping in the way the misinformation. And what I mean about that is you can go and read these books and all this literature that's written on hogs, feral hogs and Eurasian boar, but who's writing all this information? You know, is it government agencies, newspaper clippings, you know, people, these editors, you know, they're getting all this information, but is it all 100%? A lot of it's good, but there's a lot of misinformation out there on hog hunting. So, and I'm going to throw something in there real quick too. For somebody that's just starting out, and they're an avid deer hunter, one thing that throws people for a loop, especially when they, let's say they hire a guide or myself, they want to come hunt with me, and this has happened a few times. They see all this stuff on the internet and on social media with these trailers with 50 hogs stacked on them, you know, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. They go out there and they got these 300-pound hogs hanging. I like to separate that from what I like to call the boar hunter or the hardcore, I guess you'd call them a hog hunter. There's a difference between eradication and hunting. And I do eradication work for landowners and whatnot. And I'm not saying that I go out there and I load up a trailer with 50 hogs because it's just myself.
Right.
So I've had people come down from upstate who just hammering on wanting to go on a hog hunt. I'm all about showing people, you know, how I do this and why I enjoy it. Most of them have a good time. And I will say that there's a large percent of those people that come down to do this that we don't harvest anything, because it is real tracking and hunting. And again, going back to these pictures of 10, 15 hogs piled up, if you're going out and you're doing crop protection or you're clearing out a nuisance and you go out there with your thermal equipment, you got 3 guys lined up and you know your shooting positions, and you go out there with your NV or your thermal and you're on the golf carts and you're cruising these fields, you'll see a sounder of 20 hogs out there. I will tell you, if the wind is right, it's not difficult to approach and get involved in what I call a slaughter fest. You know, it's not pretty. They very rarely do you see people with the sound turned way up, because it's ugly, you know. And I'm not saying that I don't participate in it. I do. But the first shot that these guys make is usually on point. But after that, they're throwing Hail Marys. I mean, they're shooting at center mass. They're hitting them in the rear end. They're gut shooting them. They're clipping their jaws. You know, they're rolling. I mean, you've seen the videos, right? Yeah. And if you're into the blood and guts and you're out there and you want to bust them up, yeah, you can do it. But I try to reiterate when I'm speaking with these people the first time on the phone and they're really wanting to hunt with me, what experience are you looking for? I mean, are you really wanting to go out there and absorb what this is all about? You know, going out there and maybe you want one for the wall or you want one for the barbecue, a big healthy sow, you know. But then you have to be careful about what you're shooting too. You know, has that sow been nursing? You know, is she malnourished? Is she real, you know, is she deprived? You know what I mean? Because when they're nursing, I mean, they get gaunt, you know, they get skinny, they lose a lot of mass. If it's an old rank boar and he's past his prime, you know, and to be honest with you, I don't care to process those at all. But if you're looking to hang one on the wall and that's what you're after, hey, more power to you, you know. So challenges. I'm going wide here.
That's
so
right.
One so basically what you're saying is that it's okay if I want to put one on the wall.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's okay if I want to hunt one, you know, with a spear and then put it on the barbecue. But it's also okay if I want to hang out the side of a Huey with thermals and a minigun. And just...
Absolutely. You know, I haven't done any helo hunts. I'm not saying I would. I've been invited.
They look pretty fun. I'm not going to lie. They look
I've been invited. They haven't happened because, you know, conflict, time restraints and whatnot. It's extremely expensive, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
Would I do it? Absolutely, just to experience it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just hanging out that copter and just, you know, and running them. I mean, it's like wing shooting. I mean, you got to know your lead. You got to know how the pilots swing. If you got a good pilot, he knows how to push the animals. You know, it's like a rodeo. Yep. You know, and then obviously you need to be a decent shot too, you know. But yeah, that would be a heck of an experience. So yeah, to reiterate, you know, crop protection, that's pretty much what I advertise on the truck. And it's a decent business if you can do it full time, you know, and it's something I don't do full time. So but I want to say what my forte is, or what people that hunt with me or have hunted with me several times, they'll probably go out there and brag about the experience, you know, tracking animals, reading sign, just knowing the habits of the animal, not so much going out there and rolling 5-10 hogs, you know, filling up your coolers, you know, because you want to have a company party, you know what I mean, have a barbecue with, you know, 10 hams on there or whatnot. I'm not saying it can't be done, but realistically, that's not the business that I'm in, you know.
It's very simply put. There is the term nuisance is for a reason. You have nuisance deer tags, you have nuisance hog tags, or whatever the quotas are. And I do have a couple of, I have zero hog experience. Obviously, I'm familiar with it a little bit. For the listeners out there, I kind of want to tie this up a little bit.
Sure.
If you are on a nuisance hunt, are you able to donate a lot of this meat? Like, let's say you do get 50 hog down. Are you able to eat all of them? Does it go to maybe some of the dogs? If you're using dogs, are they able to eat it? Like, does most of the meat get used, or?
I know legally there's a lot of red tape in donating meat, you know, because of the liability. It's just, I know some guys that are trying to get involved with passing some kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but they're trying to get on the legal side of it and put it to a good cause, which I think is a great idea. You know, you have some
soup kitchens or something.
Absolutely. You've got some high profile, I'm not going to name people, but some people that I've talked to, some real high profile individuals in the entertainment sector
Okay.
And I'm all about it,
Yeah.
but the question is, how do you make it safe? How do you know that through transport
Yeah.
that meat did stay cold, that it didn't get soiled,
Mhm.
that it is of decent quality,
Sure.
it's like deer hunting. I know that when I was doing some hunting in Indiana, I was harvesting deer that were eating a lot of soybeans,
Mhm.
things like that, or corn, and they fattened up really good. And there was an area out in Advance, Missouri that I was hunting for a while. Those deer just did not stack the weight on. There wasn't a lot of agriculture in that area. So, the diet has a lot to do with it too. So now your next question is about hog meat. There is a difference of shooting hogs that are in an agricultural area that basically have grown and consumed their diet over time, eating corn, peanuts, cottonseed, things like this, versus like when I'm out, for instance, like right now, we were talking earlier about this boar that I've been on here for the last few months. It's going on about 5 months. Just getting to know what he's doing and how he acts. That hog is not eating agricultural. He's down in the swamp bottoms, he's running the creeks. So you can imagine what he's eating, the grubs and invertebrates and just nasty stuff. And they'll eat the bottom of a trash can out if they need to. I mean, they're resilient.
Yeah.
Would that be a good eating hog? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So they say, you are what you eat.
Yep.
That's true. That is true.
Okay.
On the flip side, like where I'm at right now, this farm here where I'm in the cabin, I work for this gentleman out here, and we clear hogs and we do coyote also. It's private
Okay.
property, so I can do this year round.
Nice.
Those hogs are clean, even though there's a creek and there's a swamp bottom that runs around the perimeter of the property, and that's where they hunker down. But at night, they come up on the edge of the fields and they're rooting. So they've got a really decent diet right now because the peanuts have been cleaned off and there's a lot of leftover. There's a lot of spoils.
Okay.
So they're eating that. And, for instance, we harvested one here not too long ago, a big old sound. She topped over 300 pounds. And that was on a video I posted last week. I thought it was a boar. It was a long shot across the pasture, but it turned out to be a female.
Okay.
She was by herself, which was a little bit odd. But I was surprised. But she was girthy.
Yeah.
I can't prove it because I didn't have a digital scale. But the landowner came out there with his dogs. We found her, and even he said, the size of that, she was just stout.
Okay.
Really big.
I want to come back to that because I did have a question about sizing boars basically on the hoof while you're hunting.
Yes.
One last question, as far as like the damage though, I've also heard that potentially dairy farmers with the wild hog scenario, is it because the boars will start burrowing into the ground and then a calf can kind of break their leg going through a pasture or something like that, and they lose calves that way? It's not so much the boars attacking the calves essentially.
I don't know. I'd like to read that article if that was an article or if it was just hearsay.
It was just a conversation, yeah.
Yeah. From my personal experience, when hogs are rooting, we talked about this earlier too. There's just a plethora of information and pictures and whatnot. You'll see that when hogs go out in the field and they start rooting, they really only go, I've never seen them go any deeper than maybe a foot or so, like in the fields.
Oh, okay.
But it's more like going in there with a tiller, if you will, and just having just no misdirection. You're sticking M80s in there, lighting them off. It just looks like a mortar field, but
Right.
They're not holes, or should I say like bombing holes that are 4 feet deep. Now, I will say that if you bait them up, or there's something in the ground that they're going after in the woods or making a wallow, I have seen, and this goes years back, I was baiting some hogs on some private property, and it was a lot of pine rolls back there, and they went down a good 4 feet.
Wow.
And the hole was maybe, I want to say about 4 to 5 feet wide. And I've never seen anything like this. When I was walking in after the damage, after baiting it up, and I was walking there. All I saw, and it appeared to look like pink and red wires sticking out of the ground. I mean, I could see dirt slung to the side. It was extremely odd. And then as I approached that hole, when I realized what it was the roots from the pine trees. While they were digging, they were snapping roots, and the roots were literally sticking out of the ground like wires.
Wow.
You know, that bright orange red root, like the color, almost like the color of carrots.
Now, let me ask you this, because I had, a little bit of nuisance control in this. It's groundhogs, I understand, can displace up to 20 yards of soil.
Yes.
Now, obviously, a hog, even if it's a small one, is considerably larger than a very large groundhog.
Yeah.
So just say like, a 50, even let's even go bigger. Let's say like a 60-pound hog.
Yep.
What's the average, I guess, soil disturbance, something that they could tear up just in a single year?
Okay. Well, let me back up just a little bit. You're talking about groundhogs. Now, I'm no expert on prairie shooting. These guys that go out and do that with groundhogs, but I understand how this works, how it comes around. When you talk about cattle, livestock breaking their legs, groundhogs burrow.
Yep.
Right? So you have these holes, you have these tunnels, and yes, the cattle walk through, one drops in, breaks its leg. That's really not the scenario with hogs. Okay. Think of a
well, even just like the crop displacement. I mean, like,
okay.
Like square footage,
right.
an equivalent area. What are we really talking about as far as like crop destruction per year for?
Yeah. And again, if you go on the internet and there's documentation on this, you can go on government websites and they'll talk about how many acres, what area. A lot of that has to depend on, believe it or not, the time of year, what crops are in the ground, what crops are in the trees, okay? Because the hogs, they're opportunistic, right? Whatever's easiest. So when you have mast, you have the nuts, you have acorns coming down, white oaks, things like that. That's like crack to deer, right? That's the hogs too. It is so hard to bait hogs when you have mast.
Right.
So now when you talk about the farms and destruction and what's going on, there's two big influences, or actually there's more than that, but the two are what's available, as far as natural resources. Okay. So if the woods are dried up or it's in the winter time, let's say around January, February, there's hardly any planting going on. Okay. The hogs will get aggressive tearing soil. But what they do is they don't necessarily go deep, but they go long. They just get their heads down and they just start plowing. So I have seen personally here on this property here, and I haven't been able to count how many hogs, but roughly maybe a dozen, maybe less. Okay. And you want to say adolescent hogs, they're not quite old, but kind of like teenagers, right? You get a dozen hogs, they can come in one night and wreck a good acre.
Wow.
3/4 of an acre. If it's relatively, and this also is a big influence, the soil.
Right.
What kind of soil are we talking about? Are they going in a field that's been harvested, done over every season, maybe 3 crops a year, maybe more? That ground is relatively soft. On the flip side, I've seen in Florida, there was a property I hunted. It was a private property. I called it the Ponderosa. He had these manicured fields on his property around a lake. So it was like turf. It looked like a golf course.
Right.
And that is, I don't want to say it's hard packed dirt, but it's fertile, but it's firm. And in one weekend, he went out of town, he came back, and all the landscaping they had done in trees and shrubs that they planted around the 3 houses on that property in one weekend, it was incredible. Everything was damaged, thousands of dollars worth of damage in a matter of just 2 nights while he wasn't there. And I want to say that it's hard to say how many square feet or how much acreage, but if I were to kind of put it all in one chunk, I'd say easily a couple of acres worth of damage, you know?
Wow.
So again, time of year, you know, what's on the ground, what's growing, what's around, the wet season, the dry season, a lot of that takes into play when you talk about damage. You know, you don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely a factor, and that's where I'm sure that would lead to more of the nuisance side of it as opposed to the actual hog hunt experience, which
Right.
I think we're going to make the official segue now. We're going to get Chris into the mix, and I think this will officially be, you know, let's really start talking Hog Snort Resort, really what it is, what do you offer, and what, you know, what that experience is like. And producer Chris, it's all yours, buddy.
All right, so here we go. We're going to start talking about Hueys, miniguns, thermals, and spear hunting because
Let's go.
That's where I'm at in my hog hunting career.
All right, let's do it.
I put it in the chat, and I did say I have a new life goal because everybody likes hanging out of helicopters, shooting hogs with ARs. I now want to shoot one with my bow, hanging out of a helicopter with Butch Whiting as my pilot. Butch Whiting is a former Army helicopter pilot. He's also the founder of Cryptech. So if I could set that up, I may just quit hunting after that.
Have you seen somebody do this?
I haven't seen anybody do it. That's what I'm saying. If I'm hanging out with my bow and Butch is my pilot, and I can score a boar,
I'm pretty sure it's been done, and there's two people that come to mind. And one would be the gentleman, Pigman.
He's done it with the bow.
If you watch a series, Sportsman Channel, and whatnot, he's huge, right?
Butch Whiting his pilot.
I'm sorry?
Was Butch Whiting his pilot?
I have no idea. I have no idea. The second person that comes, the second person that comes to mind, which I wouldn't doubt that he's done it, and that'd be Ted Nugent.
If I had to bet somebody would do it, it'd be the news.
Well, it would have been Ted or maybe Joe Rogan.
Well, I tell you what, if I see him here in a couple of weeks, I'll be sure to stop and ask him.
All right,
there you go.
Well, you got to let me know because if not, I got to get cracking on this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to put Africa aside, Portugal, every other hunt that I have planned, going to the side.
I can only imagine what that experience would be like.
I tell you what, it would be a lot of practice, and I probably need a lot of arrows. There would be a lot of lost arrows.
Yeah, you're putting somebody in business without a doubt with arrows.
So, all right, before we do get started, I want to. Somebody in the chat did ask, what are you hunting hogs with? And I guess this would be like your typical hunt, and then I will expand that to what else would you hunt them with? Spear, guns, night, day,
right?
Tractants, baits, and I know we kind of covered a little bit of this in the beginning. So, and I don't want to hold this up too much because we got a lot more to cover. But just a brief overview on that. Like, what are you kind of offering? Well, you know what? Scratch that. Let's go into Hog Snort, and then we'll kind of circle back to this question.
All right.
With a quick cheers to our friends Nighthawk, so we don't forget. We got mutual friends with Nighthawk.
Who is that? I've never heard of these guys before.
Jason's a great guy, man. Great guy.
Friends of the show, so we wanted to make sure we gave them a shout out.
There you go, Nighthawk. Cheers.
Is he chiming in right now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's the one that asked that question, so we'll circle back to it.
All right.
But
so you're asking me what do I use, right?
Well, let's get what do you do with Hog Snort? Let's start with that, and then we'll get into means and methods.
All right, man. This program is only an hour. I'm gonna.
Nah, you're all right. Don't worry about that.
I'm gonna try to. So you're going to ask me what is the Hog Snort? Where did this come about, or what was my initial motivation to do this?
Yeah. How did you initially decide this? Like, what was that spark that said, "Wow, this is a good idea. I want to do this."
As my friends know and acquaintances, people, Jason, love that guy, man. He's awesome. He's helped me out so much with equipment and whatnot. These people will tell you that when they're hunting with me, it's like that is, and I don't want to get into the religion topic. I'm not going to get into the politics, but when I'm out hunting, not harvesting, but when I'm hunting, that is my church. That is outside of what I have at home, my family life. That is what it refreshes me, it rejuvenates me. So when I'm out there interacting, not necessarily maybe teaching somebody or showing somebody, but when I'm out there making mistakes, to me, that's invaluable. So talking about how this wraps around Hog Snort Resort. Years back, when I was diving into all this information and I was starting to get experience on the ground chasing these hogs, I started picking up on how many statements were inaccurate or totally 180 degrees in the opposite direction of I don't want to say factual, but helpful in harvesting hogs, especially when we're talking about hunting mature boars, not crop protection, not killing off sounders in a cornfield, walking up on them and laying them down. I'm talking about aggressively going after that animal you're pursuing, maybe that you have on your camera, as you would with a trophy deer, right? It might not be the rack, but it might be one that you've seen for 3 years, just morphing into this super smart, obscure, this challenge. Okay. So I really started to dive into attractants, and what's on the shelf. And, you go to your stores and you see what's on the shelf and you're buying every product out there and you're trying this and trying that. As you know, if you're a hunter, okay, if the animal's there, the animal is there. If the animal's not, I don't care what potion you have in deer hunting and scents, hog attractants, it doesn't work. There's so much wrapped around marketing, and what's on the shelf. And it's in going back to what I was trying to do with Hog Snort. I wanted to come up with a way, or not necessarily just a product, but I wanted to come up with a way to draw the animals to me versus me spending all my time chasing. You know what I mean? And observing is one thing, but actually chasing an animal, it's like, how do I get around the curve? How do I jump over that hurdle and actually entice that animal to sticking around? It's not all about the attractants, but that is a part of it, And I don't know if we want to dive into that, but my mindset was, what's out there in nature that draws mature boars to an area? And again, if you're just a season hunter, like during deer season, it's difficult to do. Dumb luck. Somebody shoots this 350-pound boar with these big cutters and all shoulder, and you're like, man, that dude's a boar hunter. But is he doing that all year? Is he clearing crops, or is he actively, like you guys, going after that buck that's been on this farm for 3-4 years? Learning the animal's characteristics. How do you draw that animal in? Are you going to do it with, I'm not going to use names, but are you going to do it with this doe pea? Are you going to use it with these pheromone strips? What is it that works? Secondly, how do you do this unless you can really spend a lot of time out there and not harvest an animal, but watch them? Now, deer, that's deer season. We talked about that pie. But for hogs, if I'm on private property, I can hunt 360, 24 hours a day with any legal weapon that you own, that you possess. You can hunt hogs with that on private property.
Okay.
That being said,
so I guess that would kind of answer the question. Could, is it a spear, a gun, night vision, thermals,
right?
Anything?
So, right, anything that you own that you want to try to harvest that hog with, if you legally own it, you can use it. Is it ethical? That's another segment right there, But going back to HSR, Hog Snort Resort, I started playing around with natural products that are in the woods, in the swamps. And the reason I started doing this is like, you have feral hogs, wild hogs, they may be attracted to something, but what are they really attracted to in the wild? Not something off the shelf, right? I wanted to do something that doesn't have sodium in it. Sodium's a preservative, right? If the animal's eating a lot of that, hogs don't sweat, right? So you want to keep sodium nitrate, you want to keep that away from them, okay? That's a poison. That's one way to kill hogs, if you can get them to ingest sodium. So I started playing around with things in the woods, in this area, started cooking stuff down, and I came up with something that is an attractant, okay, that's something they do not eat, but it's something that you apply to a tree. 100% natural. My idea was not to make this to sell it to have income. That's not what that was about. It was about to increase my percentages of getting the animals to hang out in an area. And how to do that and not make them sick, not pollute the area. You talk to some guys, they'll talk about the old farmers would pour diesel fuel down. The hogs like diesel.
Do they really?
Oh yeah. Some guys will even put it in the corn. I don't know. We don't have enough time maybe to go over all of this, right? It's so interesting. I get wrapped up in this.
I think you're locking yourself into a part 2. You're going to have to come back and join us.
I may, but so I'll try to compose this here and try to make it quick and factual.
It's all right.
When they clear timber down here, because it's a big timber area, you have logging equipment that comes in. And I actually learned this back when I was in Florida because this gentleman owned a timber company.
Okay.
And he said, Martin, when they get through clearing that 150 acres back there, go back next week when they get the equipment off there. The hogs will be back there blowing it up. I'm like, why is that? The equipment that these companies run, they have all the hydraulic lines on there. They got the big fuel tank stations. They seep oil. They seep hydraulic fluid. They spill diesel fuel. The hogs will smell that and they'll hone in on it and they'll blow it up. They'll get in there and start making these wallows like elk wallows, in the mud. And the reason for that is that petroleum on them helps with the irritants, the bugs, the mites, things like that. So they roll in that. So what people were doing around here, I should say around here, in areas, they would get some diesel fuel or some old diesel oil, doing an oil change on your Ford, and they'd go out there and pour some on the ground. And if the sounders are in the area, give them a few days, they'll find it. They'll start hitting it. They'll roll in there, and it just looks like a blowout, like somebody laid a mortar in there, and that's that wallow.
Right.
And it has that sulfur smell. And believe it or not, what some people were doing is like when they would bait hogs with just corn. You heard about sour mash and making it sour. These guys, they don't do that. They would take a quart of diesel fuel, a 50-pound sack of corn, and they dump that quart of diesel fuel in the corn. The hogs will eat it. Don't ask me why they don't get sick, but they'll eat it. The thing is, the coons and the deer will not touch the corn. Only the hogs, and the hogs will eat it. So, there's two problems with that. One, obviously, it's poisoning. Secondly, the EPA, right? The government finds out you're dumping petroleum on the ground, they're going to come shut you down.
Yeah.
So going back to HSR and how that came to fruition, I was making an attractant that I knew that if I put this on the trees, and it does resemble, if you look at it, it looks like motor oil, like tar. It's not what it is. But if it does, eventually it's going to seep on the ground, right? The hogs are rubbing on it, they're shouldering it, they're even biting the tree. They get real aggressive on it. If that seeps into the ground, it gets into the water table. That could wind up 3 miles on the other property because it's in a creek. You know what it takes? You take a couple of drops of oil on water, you can see that forever on a creek. It's just that rainbow. So I'm like, how do I legally do this where somebody can't come after me and say, hey, you can't do that. It's like dumping antifreeze or dumping oil, So, there's so many companies out there. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't work, but I just wanted to stay away from the sodium. I wanted to stay away from petroleum. I wanted to be 100% safe for the environment. I did start selling some of it and got some good interest, but my packaging wasn't very good. And I didn't want to take it to the next level, manufacturing, distribution. People are telling me, oh man, you need to market. You really need to go with this. I'm like, that's not really why I'm doing it. I want to see if I can hold those animals. The hogs, I look at them, and can I say this without getting in trouble? They kind of remind me of like a clan of gypsies. They're transients. They move. So they have to have water. That's number one. And then two, obviously, is the resources of food. And secondly, is shelter. So you got to have water, you got to have food, you got to have shelter. If there's any kind of pressure in that area, meaning being shot at or whatnot, they have no problem just getting up and moving. They'll go to the next county. It makes no difference. They'll run a creek, they'll run a highway ditch for miles and go into another area. Opposed to deer hunting, and correct me if I'm wrong, they say that where a deer is born or where a deer, a buck or a doe is dropped, that normally they stay within a few miles of that range. I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, I think they would call that like their core range.
Correct.
Something to that. Yeah.
Hogs are not like this at all. So if you go in there, especially if it's an older boar, it's like that old buck, you're not going to fool them twice. You may get the goods on them one time, but they are so smart. They are so smart that, not saying that if they smell you, you catch your presence, but you got to get out, right? So HSR to me was like, I want to learn everything I possibly can about how they act, their social structure, what they eat, how they travel, how fast can they travel, the anatomy of the animal, what calibers work best. And then I step into the second thing, what I like to do, but yeah, that's how HSR came about. It was more about the animal in chasing boars, even though we all know that, again, I'll clear out a sounder if that's what's needed, on private property. So I don't know where you want to go from here in the discussion. There's so much. I mean, we could really branch off like a shrub brush,
I'm sure, Chris, we could probably talk about some of the weaponry and in the short version, what would a hunt basically look like? What type of tactics
with me
do you think work more frequently than
okay like Jason, when we met the first time and he came down, we didn't hog hunt, but I kind of gave him a lay of the land. He brought his daughter down, had a blast. We're down here for a little better part of a day. What I do, and this is just me, and we can top on this if you want a little bit later, why I got into this caliber, 458 SOCOM. Okay, AR platform. So that's 458, which is comparable, right, to 4570. I mean, sort of, right? Your lever action, but we're talking about AR platform. My second go-to is a 338 Spectre. It's a 338 caliber,
really,
almost like diameter-wise, like your Lapua, right?
Yeah.
But it's a short case. It's like a 10 millimeter Magnum pistol case, but the casing is thicker. There are some guys that modify that case if they're doing reloading. It's not what we do here. So, and I'll put a plug in on that company that sponsors me on these calibers and the rifles that I shoot. And my second go-to is what I do my coyote hunting around here, and my pasture. I call it pasture pimping. I'm taking shots. What I call long range out here is over 300 yards. I rarely go past, I think my longest shot might have been just over 400, 420 yards, something like that. I consider that long here. The pastures have a high rise to them. They roll. So it's really hard to get any shots farther than that. But that is a long shot at, using thermal. I know guys now are going out, way past that. But for around here, and that is the 240 Spectre. And I'm sure you guys are familiar. A couple of years back, what is it? The 6 millimeter arc that came out. Yeah, 6 millimeter arc. It's very close to that, but the 240 Spectre was developed by Southern Ballistic Research for the military. And they were working on that already more than 5 years ago. So I was shooting that prototype years back when that was just on the bench before it actually went to market. So it's a fairly light round, but it's very fast, flat shooting. And it's not a very heavy bullet, but compared to like a 5.56, what are you shooting? 55 grain, 65 grain?
Yeah.
The 240, I'm pushing 103 grain and 105 grain.
Wow.
It's a very long bullet. The casing is very short, but out to 1,000 yards, I'm still supersonic with that round.
So I guess
So
let me
I
ask
think it's
you
probably
this,
loud crack.
for hogs.
yeah,
You're really looking at, and I don't, you know, I guess forgive me for my analogies here, but you're looking for bigger, slower, and like a harder punch.
yeah,
And being able to reach out and touch something and plug that precision hole through it.
right.
You're looking for that.
That drop down, yeah.
Yeah,
And just that kinetic energy of just bang.
right. Can I put a plug in here for this company, and I'll tell you how it came around?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Unless
Again,
it's Nighthawk Pro Gear, we don't plug.
No, we're going to get to Jason in a minute because he's an integral part of this whole equation here. There's really three companies that came together over a course of years. I don't want to say came along for the ride, but without them, seriously, it wouldn't have gone as far as it's gone to this day. And Jason's one of them, obviously. When I started shooting hogs or really getting into it, when I started, I was using a 270 WSM, deer hunting, bolt gun, loved it. Back then, there was hardly anybody running thermals or anything like that. Guys were running around with, a little green light mounted on top of the scope. So you're talking about a bolt gun. That in itself, there's challenges to that when you start shooting in the sounders. So I almost immediately started looking at the AR platforms, but I wanted something that was heavy, meaning, knockdown power. I wanted something that thumps. And, there's a saying in the shooting industry, the developers, if you will, there is no substitute for mass. And that's the guys in the military. They will tell you that if you connect and you've got mass, that's what it takes. And you can argue that and say, well, accuracy is king. It is. There's no doubt. Animals will walk even with a 458 if you don't hit them right. You gut shoot one and take his innards out. He's going to die, but you're not going to drop him. That being said, the type of hunting that we do here, it's very thick, super thick. And sometimes shot placement is king, but you have obstruction. And that animal might lock up. And you've identified him properly. You know what it is. There's no doubt. You might have saw his head. You got his shoulder. But there may be a 6-inch tree, that's blocking the red zone. With what I'm using, if I have no other chance of knocking down that animal, especially if it's a tournament, I'm going to center punch that tree, and that animal will go down if I'm getting the spot that I'm trying to hit. And that's another topic there about the perfect placement shot. People get really animated about it. You hit any animal in the right spot, any caliber, archery, spear, the animal's going down. The question is it ethical? That's another topic. But for me, because it's so thick, a lot of times I'm by myself. The last thing I want to do is injure an animal and not be able to retrieve it. It does happen. So no substitute for mass. Secondly, mass is great, but you have to have accuracy. So looking into the 458 SOCOM, I did my research on that. And I was like, this is the cartridge for me. This is what I want. This is what I want to go with. And I made up my mind before I bought the first rifle. So I ordered the rifle, and we'll just say Company X. I contacted them, told them what I do and what I do full time, which is technical work in the automotive industry. So I'm not a loader myself, but I understand, I like to read up on everything, but I really don't have time to sit there in the basement and work up all these loads. So I contacted this company that has a huge YouTube presence. Awesome. They got great advertising, and got together with the owner of the company and worked with him for a little bit, but things started unraveling. And rather than walking away from the cartridge, I had a list of other companies that load 458. And, there's Lehigh Defense, and there's this and there's that. One of them that I did not contact because they are military law enforcement, that's Southern Ballistic Research in Brunswick, Georgia. And they are actually not too far from where I work. And I was just having one of these off weeks. So I was really getting ticked off. I'm like, what's the chances that they'll even want to talk to me? Because I don't like bouncing around with different manufacturers. I like to find one load, one round, run it, get proficient with it. And if I have questions, contact them. Just give me some clean information, no static. And what I did was I just shot them an email from work, just real quick, told them what I do. HSR, I'm really into hog hunting. The 458 is my fit. I'm not looking for handouts. I just want to get with a reputable company. I can get good feedback, good support, no handouts. And what blew me away is when I left work, 3 hours later, I got a phone call, and it was the president of SBR.
Wow.
And it just kind of knocked me back. I was walking to the car. Short story long story short. Before I got home, they invited me over to the facility, gave me a nickel tour. Didn't know me from Adam. And me being a civilian and then being law enforcement military, what are the chances of that? And we didn't talk for 2 hours, and I walked out with a handshake, and the rest is history. So Southern Ballistic Research is a manufacturer. They are a developer. If you look at 458 SOCOM and looked at who actually developed that, you're going to see that name in that write-up. So they are a dominant force in the SOCOM Spectre realm, if you will, in military law enforcement. So with that being said, the 458 SOCOM is what I use primarily when I'm walking in the thick. If I'm shooting a little bit longer, maybe I'm shooting fire rows, or I might be in a shooting house and where I'm waiting on an animal to come through, and I might have a shot that runs out a little bit longer, I use that 338 Spectre. To give you an idea, that's I'm running a 225 grain soft point out of that. And that is AR-15. It's not AR-10. It's AR-15.
Okay.
So the 458 SOCOM, I'm shooting like 300 grain hollow points. And believe it or not, that's extremely accurate. I mean, you're punching sub MOA,
Wow.
100
Really?
yards. I mean, touching rounds. Yeah, it's incredible. The 338, same thing. And the 240, the same thing. So what has happened now is working with SBR on the outside, they've basically brought me in under their wings in the loading and development that they do. I call it the voodoo room, where nobody talks outside the room. Things that go on in there in development, it's insane what goes on in these facilities. It's more than what you see in these advertisements and the machines running, and
Right.
they actually, I just can't go into detail what they do, but when something is coming around that they're working on and they need to run that ammo outside the lab, your friend gets to run it. You know what I mean? And what better way to test it than on hogs? What's the effective, what does that cartridge do at 140 yards with this bullet, So
I mean, the only better thing I can think to test them on is Cape Buffalo, but that's
yeah, right.
I'm
Right.
just saying,
Yeah, that's right. So send me there. Let me do it. Right.
But, hey, if you want to go,
Yeah.
saying, you want to go shoot warthogs, I might know a guy. I'm just
That is on my bucket list right there.
Yeah. Well, that could happen. We do have a connect with the
I'm
show.
just, well, if it's bucket list,
So yeah, so I went around in a big circle. I'm looping here. I'm looping, no sleep. But answer your question: 458 SOCOM, 338 Spectre, 240 Spectre. And I am going to reiterate here, you can hunt hogs with anything you legally own. And I know the guys out there, somebody chimed in and said, well, I shoot them with a 22 LR. Good for you, man. I'm glad you can do that. But if you come out here, I'm going to ask you to put it away and don't use it. I'm not going to have somebody next to me, their prowess, show me what they can do with a 22 at 150 yards because he can ear hole shot an animal. I don't want to get into that, Archery, I've had some guys do some archery with me out of a shooting house. I will say that if that is your bucket list and you want to do it, we're going to have an agreement that when that animal runs off, if you don't nerve shoot that animal, he runs off, you're getting on your hands and knees and going after, and you're digging that animal out.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, maybe up where you guys are, you have flatter, big woods, if you will, big timber.
Yeah.
Not too bad not too bad to track an animal, but not down here, not in the water and all the briars and everything. I don't want any part of that.
No,
right,
I understand.
So here's the new bucket list. Other than a helicopter bow hunt with Butch Whiting.
Yep.
I want to take one of those Spetsnaz throwing shovels.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a military entrenching tool that the Russian special forces developed, and they sharpened two of the edges on it so you can throw it like a hatchet.
Man,
you can never just be normal. You can never just be normal.
If I hit it, I want you backing me up with the 458, obviously.
Yeah. Man,
I did have one question here that I didn't get to ask before. Judging the size of a boar or a sow, like on the hoof during a hunt, is it like for a new hunter, what would be the easiest way to kind of explain, let's say, a quote unquote shooter or not?
Good question. That is the hunter. That is 100% the hunter. There's nothing that tickles me more than seeing a newcomer to the sport with their first harvest. And, I'll see a picture of this young child hunting with their father, their mother, whatever that may be, little girl, and it's a slick head. You know what I mean? That weighs 100 pounds, and that kid's grinning from ear to ear. That right there.
Okay.
That is a trophy, right? So, I'm not proud to say, I'm not saying this like I'm proud of it, but I cleared out a sounder one time, and we probably don't want to get into techniques, but I shot the alpha sow in 12 of her litter in 1 hour. And I had them stacked up in the back of my side-by-side. It was for a tournament. So I cleaned house.
Yeah.
Some of them weighed 8 pounds. Yeah. You know what I mean? And is that ethical hunting? It was a tournament. The landowner was glad I did it. Would I have done it had it not been a tournament or there wasn't an outside influence, meaning the landowner? I would have let the animals walk. Right. You know what I mean? There was a sow and she was still raising her young,
I do want to take a moment while we're talking about this to preface.
Yeah.
Hogs are an invasive, destructive species.
Right.
This is not out there shooting, spotted fawns because this is the only deer I saw this year. No, there's a reason for taking out hogs. Every hog that you see, it's not just if it comes in and it's a pig and we're shooting it, they are
falls under the nuisance
entirely
category.
invasive.
It's
They
that
are
simple.
entirely destructive. It's if you leave one next year, you're going to have 20 maybe.
That is true, but contrary to that statement, and this we're going to get some hate on this one. There is no way that I would have learned what I know today in all the hunting that I do if I would have taken that approach. And the reason that is that if you want to learn the characteristics of an animal and its social structure, you can't do that by pulling the trigger every time you see a head pop up or one approach. You won't. The hardest thing for me at first, when I really started getting into the other side of this, and it was not to pull the trigger. You know what I mean? To have a sounder come in with a dozen, and there'd be 2 adolescent boars, younger boars, before they were kicked out, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
To have them root around for 15, 20 minutes and actually watch the structure, the whole, I don't know, you call it a family sounder, to watch the structure, how they act, how they talk.
Yep.
There's no way you can do that if you start popping them off. And that is the hardest thing to do when you're starting off. It's kind of like, I kind of joke about some family members of mine that, when they're younger and they're out there deer hunting, down here in Georgia through the season, you can take X amount of doe, so many bucks. These guys were shooting the crap out of these deer and bragging about it. You know what I mean? And some of them were gut shot. And I'd hear these stories about, I took this shot at 300 yards, and
Oh, God.
where's the animal? Well, we didn't recover it. We tried tracking. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
The hunting spirit, what it's about, has not been instilled. You know what I mean? It's about bragging. It's like, how many dates have you gone on? There's that adolescence. Unfortunately, that still carries on in the hunting realm, if you will. I hate to say it, but there are a lot of guys out there that talk about how big the racks are, how big the cutters are on the hog, how many animals they've harvested. And I'm not saying that you're not a good hunter, but for me, that's not my incentive. My incentive is to learn as much as I possibly could about that animal in its natural environment, not in a high fence, not on a farm. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that. These guys that do these, develop these vocalization tools, if you will, for hog calling and whatnot, the majority of those hogs are raised in a pen, they're caught feral, and they use them and they use the sounds and whatnot. Yeah, it typically, I see where they're going with it. That animal is not going to act the same when it's been penned up for 6 months as the ones that I run into out here. It's a totally different animal. And I don't know if we want to get into this on this podcast or whatnot, but we talk about misinformation and what's out there, and some of the false statements that I see regularly about hogs in general, and just their attributes and how they act and what they're good at, what they're not good at. And I'm like, I'm rubbing my eyes going, I'm not the person to correct them, say, man, you are so off, where you got that in some write-up. And it's funny, so when something goes to print and somebody reads it, it's already in the system. You know what I mean? And you got these believers or people that are in the business, and they build on that statement, and so much of what I've seen over, well, let's be honest here. It's going on 40 years of hunting for me.
Good for you.
40 years of hunting. I'm not saying I've seen everything, but I've seen some bizarre things happening in the woods, and just how these animals act. And some of it I can't prove, but I've witnessed it, and I have no reason to make up stories. My hunting stories are not exaggerated, by any means, and we get those guys around hunt camp, that like to really embellish and, make fruit salad. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of like, no, man, for me, it's just mashed potatoes with butter. I'm not going to throw all this other stuff on there, but,
well, I think Chris and I will completely support your feelings. The tagline for our show is measure the story, not the inches.
Oh yeah.
And it's honestly something that we're very proud of that statement, because it's who we are. We're outdoorsmen, we're hunters, we're pursuing that chase every day, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. We don't claim to be anything we're not. We don't claim to be a hunter of a certain caliber that we're not. This is a real everyday depiction of what we're doing on our journey to continue to improve as hunters.
I mean, I got a good friend.
Unless we're talking safari hunting, then we are definitely going toe to toe on Cape Buffalo measurements here.
All right.
Hey,
well, you got me on that one.
Why not?
Just saying.
I've got a really good friend that I'm actually hunting on his property right now. I've been chasing his, and you saw the pictures. I've been chasing his man, he's a fat daddy. I mean, he's got some shoulders on him. He doesn't have huge cutters. But anyway, this has been going on for about 7 months.
Right.
And I've been watching this animal. And there's the challenge right there. He doesn't hang around, but he's cruising. And he's in that area. And I've seen him once. But I couldn't make the shot. I couldn't pull it off.
Yep.
And I have a really narrow window. It's maybe about 15 feet of side to side. And the shot's maybe about 75 yards, which is not typically a hard shot, but it's a brutal shot when you have conditions. What we're talking about, you said about what goes on here. I'm in the woods at 5 PM. I don't roll out till sun up, which is 7 AM.
Right.
And it dropped down to freezing here. And when you're not moving and you've been sitting still for 14 hours, you can throw that macho stuff out the window, man. There's very few people that can actually sit there and not move. You know, your core temperature drops, you know, but you can't move. You can't be walking around. It's basically an ambush. Right. You know, in milder temperatures, you know, and the mosquitoes aren't running, it's not a big deal. But to me, that's hunting, if you will. You know, it's that one boar. I'm looking for him. I know what he looks like. I know his characteristics. He's got a funky bend on the back leg. I mean, I've dissected this guy. I'm watching his water lines on his body. I know he's coming through that creek. I know he's coming in from the north, but he doesn't stick around, you know? So when you talk about measuring the inches, for me, it's not measuring the inches, man. It's like, it's measuring the cramps. How many cramps have I had in my backside since I've been climbing, hanging in these trees, waiting on this guy, you know? If it does come to fruition and I do get him, that in itself to me is the trophy. If he looks good on the wall, that's awesome. You know what I mean? But more so than that, the guys that I'm working this property on, they're hardcore deer hunters. They don't want hogs on that property.
Right.
And I always thought, they're deer hunters. They got the equipment. They're on private property. Why don't they do it? They don't want to sit out there, you know, from sundown to sunup, you know, and they're just like, man, you're a maniac, man. You do it. That's your forte.
Right.
Let me have the keys to the gate, man. I'm there.
That's
you know what I mean? Yeah. Let's do this. So anyway, yeah. Nothing tickles me more than seeing a young kid on their first harvest, or even an adult that's never, you know, taken a hog down, you know, and it's a 80-pound healthy sow, you know, that we can butcher up and, you know, do the Boston butts on and take the hams out and the back straps, you know, and then that's something in your freezer for a year.
I think you're officially, if you're willing, you're going to have to come back for at least one more episode. And,
anytime.
We could really dive into like the breakdown, some recipes.
Yeah.
You know,
anytime.
Ham scenario. So, because again, like you said in the beginning, there's so much we could dive into.
Oh, there's
we just tickled it tonight.
Yeah, there's so much out there, you know, and again, HSR for me, or HSR Hog Snort Resort, is just all about the experience and learning that animal. And yeah, if we had more time, I could tell you stories of things that I've seen out there in the woods, unobstructed, 2 AM with a solitary animal, and just them doing things that somebody at the DNR say, a hog can't do that. No, it can't. I saw it. And it wasn't, you know, that wasn't sleep, you know, that wasn't fatigue, you know, sleep deprivation. I saw it, you know, and, man, it's I'm sure you guys have seen some pretty cool stuff where maybe the way a buck is working through a rub line or something, just doing something really weird. You know what I mean? And not that the animal's damaged, but there's something that animal's doing in particular. It hasn't been seen before, you know?
I think adding a camera to my hunting gear, especially if it's a deer that I know I'm not going to, you know, attempt to shoot at. All right, well, instead of picking up my bow, I pick up my camera now on the camera arm, and, you know, being able to really zoom in and watch all the intricate details, watching their ears flicker, their nose, all their mannerisms that you really can't see from afar. It's amazing. You know, it's no wonder why they win the game.
Right. Quick story. But something I thought was pretty cool. And I kicked myself for throwing this phone away. I had videoed on my phone a sow that came in. This was probably 8 years ago. And it was in the flood stage. And the timber was flooded. It was really deep. This sow came in and she was literally swimming. That's how deep the swamp was.
Really?
And behind her she had all her little ones, and they were swimming behind her, following her. And what it was is I had dumped corn bait in the swamp from a shooting house about 50 feet from my window. I'm up about 12 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, you can't see it now because it had flooded. The water came in and it came up, I don't know, maybe about 2 feet. So everything was covered. Well, the little hogs were on this hump right next to her on this, where, you know, the pines, you know. So they were above water, obviously, and they're standing about belly deep in the water. And that sow was next to them in the water, mid-shoulder. And she took her head and went straight under the water where I had dumped that corn.
Wow.
There was a hole under
Yeah.
the water. So think of it as like a bass bed, you know, where a bass might nest, you know. And so there was a divot, and she would come up while she's chewing the corn and shake her ears like a dog that's got wet ears, you know, shake the water out of her ears. And she kept munching, looking around, and she'd go right back down. And she did this for like 5 minutes. Two things. How did she know that that corn was right there underwater? Meaning she knew that spot. She knew that that's where that corn was being dumped. There's no way she could have smelled it. Secondly, her little ones came in behind her. One of them was imitating her, but wasn't coming up with anything. So the fact that she completely submerged her head past her ears is a no-no, because, you know, they're on alert. She's the alpha. I mean, she's on guard. Well, when she's submerging like that, she's totally blind. She can't hear. But she was so entrenched with getting that corn out of that water. I could have shot her, you know what I mean? And I filmed it on my phone. And I had that phone, I don't know, a couple of years, but it's before I really started getting into the HSR thing, you know, and I dumped that phone. I was like, man, I recorded something in full color. You know what I mean? Because I had enough moonlight coming in. It wasn't real late. It was like cinematography, man, 4K. Right, and I dumped that phone. I dumped it. So, I mean, there's stuff that I've seen out there, and, you know, it's incredible. You know, didn't pull the trigger, but I learned something, you know, that she knew where that was at. She knew where the tree, you know, she must have. There's that tree. It's between that tree and that cypress right there. And she knew exactly where to stand and go for it. And she was just going to town.
That's amazing.
So cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Now you got me thinking.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I held off on the engineering and everything, so I'm not going to get into it. I was thinking some basic bio. I was trying to come up with an answer for this. So
I'm all ears.
Well, all right. So I'll give you my thoughts on this. So why she went under, number one, if she had young with her, it's not that she was trying to teach the young, she was hungry enough.
Oh yeah.
That she said, I'm gonna let my guard down because I have to eat to keep my young alive.
Sure.
Number two, I'm in a swamp. Sound carries much better over water than it does over dry land. So her being out in the water, knowing she could submerge, eat, then come back up with her young, knowing that and I'm just saying maybe she would feel the vibration, if not hear, while she was underwater, of something coming at her.
I don't know.
I could go on for. I'm not going to do.
We're stretching at that one. I think a little bit.
But we're not going to get into it. We're not going to get into the engineering and logical thought here. We're going to put it aside. But I could come up with some theories.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, how much time do we have? Throw any question you want at me, and I'll try to answer it. Something that you're kind of.
How deep? How far out in the swamp was this from the nearest dry land? Let me ask you that.
From the logging road, maybe about 200 yards in.
So it was water for 200 yards.
Easily.
Wet. I'll get maybe not water, but wet.
Knee high. Yeah, knee high water easily. You know, they swim great, right? I mean, they'll cross rivers and everything else to get to the right area. I mean, water is no problem. I mean, obviously
the corn would be floating at that point too.
No, not if it's
no. When you get stuff waterlogged, Dave, everything
sure.
sinks.
Yeah, I mean, some of it will.
Yeah.
If you were to dump dry corn, but this was soured corn that I had
Yeah.
in the ground, and then it rained hard, the river came up, you know what I mean, and then the next day the flood, you know what I mean, it just come through. So this shooting house is about 12 feet, above flood stage, but
I really
man,
think it was just orientation. She knew her background. She knew that's her home. That's her living room. That's her house. She knew exactly where she was, and she was just able to orient it. And she got it.
So I got another good one for anybody that's watching or listening. Here's a good. Do we have time? We got a few minutes?
Yeah, we can wrap it up with this one. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Somebody tell me, this is going to start something here. There's this statement that flies around, and hey, you guys go ahead and tag me on this. Go ahead. Here comes all the hate mail. I've been doing this so long, and I'm saying I don't want to label myself as the know-it-all, the answer to everything, right? There are a lot of writings out there in this conception that hogs have poor eyesight. And I'm going to debunk this one. Okay. I will say that they do not have acute eyesight, meaning their focus is off, their depth perception. Okay. But don't tell me that a hog is nearly blind. Okay. Now, this is why I'm bringing this up, because I hear this with these people that want to come hunt with me. Well, yeah, you can walk up on them, and that's right. That's what you're seeing when these guys are out in the field with the thermals. There's 5 guys wide, and they're walking up this pasture, and they're getting within 50 yards of these hogs. There's 2 things going on here. One, they're not being backlit. They're in the dark. Okay. Secondly, the hogs are preoccupied. They're down there, they're rooting, they're making kinds of racket, they're digging around, and they're open, and they feel relatively safe. Try that in the swamp. It's not happening. And there's 2 reasons I say that's not happening. One, you show me a video of guys hunting in the swamps with their thermal, because everybody's recording kill shots now, or night vision. How come I never seen a sounder when there's a group of hogs come in? One guy does the death punch, and those hogs bust off like rats in the kitchen, man. Have you ever seen a hog run into a tree?
No.
In the pitch dark? Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen deer do that.
I've never
seen it when they're shot. I've seen
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about a group of hogs.
Right.
If their eyesight is that
uninjured animal, any animal, not just a hog. I'll give you any animal.
But my point being is, if you turn, even with the lights off, and my pupils have adjusted to as far as they'll go, in the pitch dark, if somebody came after me and I started running through the woods, I'd probably knock myself out in 15 steps. I'm hitting something.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm dodging, ducking, and diving, all that stuff that's out there. I'm not saying the animal would never run into a tree or something, but I have never seen it. Explain that to me, please. Somebody go ahead, send it to me. And I'm not saying I'm always right. I mean, prove me wrong. I want to learn something. It's all about learning something, but I've never seen it. And you look at some of my videos, some of my thermal shots that I do, you'll see 4 hogs and they're zipping through the trees. They're cutting left, they're cutting right. I'm like, how do they do that? They can't smell that tree when they're running full throttle. How do they do that? They got to be able to see it, so maybe, again, they don't have acute distance vision, but they can see fine. They can see past 100 yards. There's no doubt about it. I've actually got busted by a hog that did not smell me, but I threw an IR on him, an IR light, and I was at ground level, and he pinned me. As soon as I flipped on my IR, he locked up. He took 3 steps back, and he turned around and he walked off. I'm like, there ain't no way. And I was like, they're supposed to be so, but you know what? If you stand at the end of the field at 200 yards and you're pointing an IR on me and you turn it on, I'll see it. I'll see that, that illuminated chip.
Right.
So, I mean, they can see. It's just a matter of casting shadows, you know what I mean? And
sure.
So there's one myth. So somebody that's out there starting out, hog hunting, don't think those animals are, you know what I mean, are nearly blind. They're not, by no means.
All right. The non-boar hunter thinks he's got it figured out.
I got answers, but I'm not going to give them. I'll tell you the answers after the show. I'll give you my answers.
Yeah, give it to me. I want it. I'll
give you my answers after the show. I want to see what everybody else has to say to this.
Yep. But yeah, if you guys have time later, you guys want to really dive into it deep and get into characteristics and really what makes those animals tick and how they act differently in the field, as far as, in the swamps and the thick timber, there's just so much to learn about them,
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, I think this is, like I said, this could be the start of a few episodes, time willing, whenever you got time. And, each episode could be a different topic, and we could have some fun with it. And really help spread, I'll say awareness to this, this style of hunting that's such a passion of yours. And like you said, it's
right.
who you are. It's a huge part of who you are. I think to end tonight, why don't you let everybody know where they can find Hog Snort Resort, like on social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube, whatever you have available.
Right. So can I give 3 plugs here?
You can plug whatever you want.
Nighthawk, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, Jason Nighthawk, I know he's listening. The Gators, I started with those, the leg protection with the lights years back when he first started up. I wear those things. I mean, it's like getting up and brushing my teeth in the morning. They're in the truck. They're on me, and 365 when I'm out there. I don't care if it's 100 degrees out or it's sub freezing. You know what I mean? So you get a chance if you're out in the field brushing brush. Definitely look into the Gators. He's got some new product coming out too. They've got some that are actually snake resistant. Don't want to call them snake proof. There's disclaimer there. So check him out. Southern Ballistic Research. This journey started with that company, if you will, them allowing me to shoot their prototypes and do the damage that I'm doing out in the field, hands down, those guys right there. And here's one for you. And people, just give me a listen here. It'll take just a second. Leapers up in Livonia, Michigan. It's a USA-based company. You probably have heard of them with the UTG products, UTG. Years back, I know they got into some of the military stuff, and quite honestly, it wasn't high-end equipment. They got some bad rap on that. But years ago, I got acquainted with this company, and they did a revamp, if you will, about 5 years ago with manufacturing. And when I say they kicked it up, they are putting some product out there right now that'll make you raise your eyebrows. I'm using their Integrex series optics on the day optics, and those are premium optics. So if you get a chance to check them out, Leapers, we're going to be at SHOT Show. As a matter of fact, they're sending me out there to Vegas here in about 2 weeks.
Oh, cool. Good for you.
And yeah, that company there, I'm running all of their billet receivers on the AR platforms. So again, this is USA made. It's not made over in China or whatnot. They do have facilities manufacturing around the world, but home base is Livonia, Michigan. So they're making just accessories back and front on the ARs, minus the trigger components and barrels and BCGs. But if you look at any of my videos, you'll see that I'm running UTG product. And I mean that if you're into building ARs or looking at some high-end stuff, they have really cranked it up, and people are really starting to take notice. So kudos to those guys for supporting me.
New York. We don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know. But hey, they do stuff for, I believe, crossbows. They do equipment for crossbows too, So last but not least, I'm just getting acquainted with this company on the thermal side. They are from Europe, and it's called Night Pearl. And I've been running their optics. They're fresh here in the United States, down in Florida. Again, they're coming from Europe. They'll be at SHOT Show too. So they are also a high-end thermal that really a lot of people haven't heard about yet, obviously, because they're just coming into the States, but they've been around, I know, for over 15 years, and they've got a very high presence in Europe. So there's something else there. So if you're looking at thermal equipment, I don't get a kickback from any of these companies. They are just people that I'm affiliated with. And if you see what I'm doing out in the field, you'll know why, that they just come with the highest regards. You know, I wouldn't put it out there if I had any qualms about product, you know, on how it works out there. And, you know, again, being an ambassador for the company, you get all this promo free stuff, and that's what generates a lot of that push. But, you know, watch the guys out there that are beating the trails and out in the woods, and they're running the same equipment for 3-4 years. There's a reason there. It's more than about what goes in a bank, you know. Exactly. It's about what promotes the lifestyle. And all these companies, man, they've stepped up to bat for me, you know, and it doesn't go unnoticed for sure.
Well, it's a tip of the hat to your dedication, you know, to the sport and the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just as much as what you're doing. You know, and it's teamwork at that point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, when you guys are ready to come down here, you know, and stick a few pigs, I don't think I can make arrangements on a helicopter. That right there is not my forte. You know.
Listen, I'm willing to do it on foot. I'll do it on foot.
Well,
I got to do it with a spear or the Spetsnaz shovel.
Or maybe we'll just have you sit on top of the cab of the tractor or something when they're cutting corn. You know what I mean? You can snipe from the top of the tractor. I don't know. You know,
whatever
I've been fortunate to have it a couple times, the wild boar, and it's damn good. So I'm down.
All right. Well, you guys let me know. We'll make something. Right. We'll get Jason to come down here and kind of make it a little
there you go,
little rendezvous point down here. You know what I mean? Get everybody together.
All right. So you got your Instagram and your YouTube. Don't forget about yourself, though. Let everybody know where they can find all your content.
Oh, yeah. Instagram, it's one word, you know, Hog Snort Resort. And the same thing on YouTube. It's just Hog Snort Resort, but one word. I think if you break it up, it leads you somewhere else. But
yeah, YouTube gets a little weird with that sometimes.
Yeah, I just try to keep it simple, you know. I'll be honest with you, as far as promoting, and I play around with that social media a little bit, but it's not my bread and butter, you know. And unfortunately, we see too many people, I think, in the industry that they focus on that just to generate, you know, revenue, you know, and get monetized and all that. And I mean, that's all good, but if that's your motivation to get monetized,
right?
I don't know. You know, I think guys like yourselves that are out there, just because you're passionate about it, like you said, you know, don't measure, you know, the inches. You know, it's about being out there and living the lifestyle, you know. So hopefully I got a few more,
keeping it alive for future generations. You know, I always say, if
hopefully I'll have a
hunting
few
or fishing, I don't want to be in it.
Yeah, hopefully I'll have a few more years where I can do this before I'm too old to climb trees, and you know,
you got it.
And you got plenty of time left.
Yeah, I've got some years on you guys, man.
Age is only a number.
Yeah. What are you drinking? I saw something. I saw a glass there. I don't know. What is it?
I'm drinking out of my official Pursuit Live rocks glass.
Okay.
But if you must know,
you see what keeps me going when I don't have sleep.
That looks damn good.
I didn't even know that existed.
Peanut butter. Yeah.
That looks good.
Listen, if there's one thing I like as much as bourbon, it's Reese's peanut butter cups. So
amen to that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. Well, Martin, I think we're going to start wrapping it up, but I just want to say, they got the well at 12 tonight. Nice.
Ooh.
Well, we started with a little bit of this, but the bottle.
Whoa. There you go.
Nice. So, again, obviously, thank you for carving out some time. I know you're very busy with your hunts, but
sure.
We're very genuine, you know, Chris and I. Anything we could do in the future for yourself, anything with Hog Snort Resort, please reach out to us, and we are genuine with that. Anything we can do to help support you and your brand along the way, we're here for you.
Likewise, and like I said, you know, if you guys want to dive into a particular topic, it might be a little easier instead of bouncing around. You know what I mean?
I think in the future, absolutely, we'll take it topic by topic, show by show, and if you're interested and willing to come on, by all means, we're willing to have you.
By all means, you know. Take a real objective approach, you know what I mean? And just keep it open on both sides. And hey, I'm all about learning something. If there's something on print that I haven't seen, I'm not out to debunk it. You know what I mean? I want to see if it works or if it doesn't. And it may work for somebody else. It may, you know, so.
All right. Producer Chris, why don't you start wrapping us up, and we'll finish off Friday night.
Well, all right. So I guess we'll wrap it up with looks like I'm going on a hog hunt sometime soon.
There you go.
That'd be
I
cool.
guess there's no other way to put it. The Only Bows team is going to have to drag Dave off Long Island, and we're going to have to go down south on a hog hunt. That's it. So I'm sold. I'm done.
That one you'll get me
I
on.
wanted to do it, and now I have no excuse.
Let's do it.
Listen, as long as we're wearing other chaps and gaiters other than Nighthawk.
Oh, enough. Stop.
Oh. You know, Jason's only a couple hours from here. I don't know. We're not going there.
No. We'll definitely be wearing our Nighthawk gaiters if we're down south, especially the snake-proof ones, because I fucking hate snakes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there's that. But Marty, thank you so
All
much
right.
for the time out. I know it was a little bit to get you on, and we are definitely going to have a part 2 to this because there's just so much more that we didn't even scratch the surface on.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
you know, definitely thank you for taking the time out. If you could,
All
just
right.
one more time, tell everybody where they can find your content.
Yeah. Hog Snort Resort. And I also have a website out, just a brief description. Actually, it's not that brief, few paragraphs. And that's at hogsnortresort.com. You know, it kind of gives a layout of what I'm doing and a little bit of the lineage. You know, it's an older website, but it's pretty much on point, you know. And if anybody has any questions, I'm watching my social media, you know, and I answer most of the questions, you know, as long as we keep it friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, gentlemen,
there you go.
great show tonight.
All right.
We learned a lot again. Chris, good job, buddy. As
Marty,
always.
Dave, thank you. Dave, I forgive. You know, listen, we're just getting into season 4, so let's get those technical glitches out of the way now.
We'll do a quick post-mortem, and see if we can.
Just saying, just
square them away.
checklist what went wrong. We'll fix it.
You
But
got it.
anyway, no, everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you're not, follow Hog Snort Resort. You can't miss it. You know, the link's right there. Just type it into Instagram, hit that follow button. It costs you $0. Same thing to hit that follow button on Pursuit Live. All right, Pursuit Live official on Instagram, at Pursuit Live on YouTube. $0 to do it. That's where we're going to be launching the show from now on. So please tell your friends, tell the fans of the show that weren't watching tonight. That's where you can find us. We want to bring you the best show that we can, and that's where it's going to be. The Empire State Outdoor Sportsman Show coming up very soon. If you're in the tri-state area or in close proximity, you want to come check it out, please come check it out. If you're coming from afar and you want to, you need a place to stay, you know what? Don't worry about the hotel. We'll bring you to the world famous Cross Lane Hunt Club camp. You can stay with me and Dave. However, we'll set Dave far apart because he snores like a bear.
I knew you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, I do too, so I'll be far apart as well. We'll
champ
take a
either.
Night rest. You'll be fine, so don't worry about it. But also, Great American Outdoor Show is coming up. You want to meet up, please hit us up. We'd love to see everybody. We're going to be walking around. You can't miss us. Look for the short guy and the tall guy that don't look like they should be walking around together. That's us. But, well, Marty, again, thank you so much for taking the time out. Everybody else, thank you for watching. We got a lot more in store for season 4. Please stay with us. If you thought season 3 was great, season 4 is going to be even better. So with that, have a good night. For everybody that's still out there hunting, got a little bit more. All right, here in New York, Dave.
Yep, a little bit time.
For you guys down there, some people out west, down south, your seasons are a little bit longer than mine. So good night, good luck, stay safe, shoot straight. We'll see you again next Friday, 8 p.m. right here on Pursuit Live.
Appreciate it, man. Guys, take care.
Thank you, man.